Right, councillors, the time being 8:30. To commence today's meeting, I'd like to ask District Manager Barcaldine, Jenny Lawrence, to lead us in prayer, please. Thank you, Jenny.
Almighty God, we acknowledge that we have a responsibility to look after your creation, especially this region we call Barcaldine Regional Council. We are also conscious that our decisions are going to affect deeply the lives, land and property of the people we have come here to serve. Remind us to exercise respect for each of our fellow councillors, staff and for the people of our region. Help us in this meeting to act wisely, justly and intelligently in all our deliberations. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege of both leading and serving, and assist us to do this well. Amen.
Amen. Councillors, I have fortunately a lengthy list of bereavements to acknowledge here today. The late Mr. Neil Victor Goodwin from Naranya at Alpha, better known as Vic. The late Mrs. Margaret Bino Jackson of Aramac. Late Mr. Thomas Grice of Barcaldine. Late Mrs. Lynette Fraser of Barcaldine. And late Mrs. Joyce Rabnott of Barcaldine. Officers of councillors, are there any other condolences? I'd ask you now to observe a minute's silence, please. Thank you, councillors. There being no apologies, as all are present, staff and councillors, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet and their elders, both past, present and future. Councillors, you are aware that as of the 12th of October, the local government regime in Queensland shifted its focus and legislative requirements for conflict of interest declarations to the new model of prescribed and declarable. We did a special meeting yesterday, however there was an item of business that was unrelated to this type of activity. So I think today is our first opportunity to fully expand upon this procedurally. I will ask in a moment for the two different types at different stages, so don't give me both at the same time. We have informally given advice to councillors, given suggestions, it's not for us to advise, given suggestion to councillors that if you believe a resolution is simply to receive a report that you may have a prescribed conflict of interest should discussion delve into a certain area, I'd ask you to hold that until, if that's applicable to you, you're more than welcome to hold it until such time. However, if there is a resolution that calls for a genuine decision and you believe you have a prescribed conflict in, or another councillor believes you have a prescribed conflict of interest, we raise that at this point. Now, I'm aware that will somewhat impact meeting procedure and we will need to be very tolerant of that. If a councillor declares that, we will hold the discussion, allow the councillor to make the formal declaration at that point, allow a minute recorder to get that accurate, and then we'll continue the discussion. So there is no hesitation. You can delve into any area you like, but rather than flagging your questions in advance, we just ask that councillors be aware of the elements of reports that if they are entered into, you can then declare that should that arise, rather than making a whole bunch of declarations at the start that don't bear relevance This will be a feel as we go. That type of procedure may change in November. Let's just work with it, and we will certainly work very closely with the local government department following today's meeting and yesterday's meeting to ensure that our procedures come up to their expectations. So, councillors, starting with you, Councillor Peoples, do you have any declarations of prescribed conflict of interest?
Mr Mayor, I have sent an email through to our acting CEO of a prescribed conflict of interest for the Barcode and Racecourse training fees. I have horses with one of the trainers that will be paying that fee, so I've declared it a prescribed.
It's 392.
392. And I've just asked one other thing there, Mr Mayor. I know you just clarified one other area, but during our training we had a few of those facilitators tell us that if you have something that you think that you're going to have over a 12-month or term, I can't remember now which it was, where you would exceed more than $2,000, you should declare it at a meeting.
That will be for gifts and benefits, so that will be future. That's a bit further down.
And that will come under gifts and benefits.
Yeah, so you need to disclose if you receive a benefit, the value of $2,000 in term of council, you need to declare that here and then update your register as well.
But it's appropriate that you declare it now. That's right, it needs to be declared today before we even start receiving.
Yes, just not right now though.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Well, you believe it's a declarable conflict of interest or a prescribed? Because it may very well be it may be a declarable conflict of interest, not a prescribed, because I think you're alluding to the country racing board.
It's the country racing board I sit on, and I definitely will go over the $2,000 mark.
Benefit, travel sponsor
in
benefits.
And accommodation, yeah.
I would suspect that would be a declarable conflict of interest, not a prescribed. You're not paid for that role.
That's right.
So you would declare that as a declarable conflict of interest, which is once again not right now.
So it's a declarable conflict of interest, it's not a gift or...
Well, it's both. It's a declaration of a benefit.
Yep.
So you've received a benefit via sponsored travel and accommodation. So you declare that today, as well as update your register, paper-based register, and that then would lead to a declarable conflict of interest where you then either can decide voluntarily to withdraw, or you can say, I'm declaring I have a conflict of interest. Leave it to your fellow councillors to decide whether that would preclude you from partaking in that conversation.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
If that was a paid board role, it would be a prescribed conflict of interest because it's voluntary, and all you are receiving is travel sponsored.
Yep.
Sponsored travel and accommodation, which I still dispute, and I think the department are still actually not sure about their advice either on that. So we'll be safe today, but I think you'll find in time to come, because that is actually paid for by the state government, that will be excluded from a declarable benefit. But you wish to do it today until we receive contrary advice?
Yeah, I'll do it today, later on, yep, when you call for it, Chip.
But once again, that's not right now.
No, when you call for it.
Thank you. So you're actually only declaring one prescribed conflict of interest, and that is in 392.
I did say that I had one in 3.4.4, but on your advice there that, it's only receiving the report. Unless something comes up, I will leave it at that for now.
Yep. Councillor Gleeson.
I have no prescribed conflicts.
Councillor Hanson.
No prescribed conflicts.
Mr Mayor, I believe I have prescribed conflict of interest in 3.62 and 3.64.
3.62.
That's the Barcode footpath upgrade estimate and the tender award flood damage package.
365. 364 is road traffic data.
Sorry, I've read that. Yep.
That's right. 2 and 5. Sorry, resource indulge me. They're throwing all that ridiculous script out that these guys had to read. We don't have to do that, do we? There's no legislative wording that they have to say.
There is a ministry.
Councillor, can somebody pass it to Councillor Peters? You can read this formally into the record and then pass it along to Councillor Arthur. I'll keep getting the numbers.
It's the
and-
last column on that.
Just let me get the numbers and then you can do all the procedural. You have nothing, councillor Plum? Councillor Rogers, any prescribed conflicts of interest?
Yes. So, in accordance with section 150 EM of the Local Government Act 2009, I inform this meeting that I believe that I have prescribed conflict of interest in the matter 3.4.2 in the Planning and Development Report as defined in section 150 EI of the Local Government Act 2009. The nature of my interest is as follows. Client receiving advice mentioned in this report is myself, and in accordance with the section 150 M of the Local Government Act, I will leave the meeting and stay away from while it's being discussed. Also,
Sit down.
no, yeah, so also I have a prescribed conflict of interest in the matter 3.3.9, the community drought support funding as defined in section 150 EI of the Local Government Act 2009. The nature of my interest is that I have been invited to do a postal workshop,
Thank you, councillor Rogers.
and I'll be leaving the room while that is.
Councillors, I believe I have a prescribed conflict of interest in item 3.9. I'll rephrase that. I have a prescribed conflict of interest in agenda item 3.9.2 due to my ownership of a horse that is trained in Barcaldine under section 150 EM of the Act, the I of the Act, I will be leaving the room whilst discussions and voting on that resolution takes place. Right, Councillor Peoples, can you read the script for that so that we don't get in trouble?
Mr Mayor, can I just ask Councillor Arthur something with regards to the town streets and the footpaths in Barcaldine? Can I ask Acting CEO, what work is that? The reason I ask in the main street, the reason I ask is that I've supplied some blocks previously. That are they going to be used on that job? Because if they are, I will clear a.
The blocks were for the Oak Street footpath project.
So is that the project?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I declare a prescribed?
That's 3.6.2.
Yes.
362 was it? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I, Councillor Peoples, informed the meeting that I have a prescribed conflict of interest as a result of supplying product for some works in 3.6.2, and I also have a prescribed conflict of interest in 3.9.2 due to having horses with a trainer that would be my relationship with the person there is he's a trainer that trains some horses for myself. That is the interest that the matter says there. I don't know how you're going to keep wording that, Mr Mayor.
That'll be fine.
I did a shocking job of that.
That'll be fine. Councillor Arthur can have the script now. This is like play skill. Oh, no. Look, as far as I'm concerned, the councillors have given us the agenda items. They've told us they've got an interest. They've complied with the Act, but if we don't read the script, we'll get smacked. So,
I, Councillor Arthur, inform the meeting that I have a prescribed conflict of interest as a result of my employer, Michael Horn Transport, in items 3.62, as he is a tenderer, and 3.65, as 3.62 as he is a potential supplier, and 3.65 as he is they are a tenderer. As a result of my conflict of interest, I will be leaving the room while the matter is considered and voted on.
That's good enough. You've read the script, I've read close enough to it. Right, councillors, does anyone believe that any other councillor has an previously undisclosed prescribed conflict of interest? There being none, I now call for declaration of, I'll do this in this, I'll swap the order here if that's all right. So give some benefits, can I do that? Because it'll lead to the declaration. Oh no, that's fine, I'll stay in order. In order. Declarations, please, councillors, of declarable conflicts of interest. Councillor Peoples.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to declare a declarable conflict of interest in my role as President of the Central West Racing Association, that I will be receiving.
What agenda item are you declaring in?
There's no agenda item.
Well, you don't need to do that, that's the next one then. Benefits.
Pass that back.
Councillor Gleeson, I reckon you've got something.
Declarable. Mr Mayor, I have a declarable COI in item 3.39, the community drought support and funding, as I am the president of the Lgaq and Camp Committee and also have family in the Barrels for Cause. I'm not sure if I have any more to gain than any others, but I am willing to leave the room if there is any discussion about the items.
Well, there is a resolution, so councillor, do you want to declare and leave, or do you want to ask your fellow councillors to make that decision for you?
I feel as though I should ask the fellow councillors, because the reason I'm saying that is because there is other councillors that are maybe in the same.
Yeah, so let's deal with 339's declarable COIs straight up. Are there any other councillors who will declare a declarable COI? We have a prescribed already, so Councillor Rogers is out of the room, so we're down to 6 as it is. Councillor Plum, do you have any in that one? Councillor Arthur? Councillor Hanson? Councillor Gleeson's declared it. Councillor Peoples? I'm going to declare a declarable COI on the basis that I'm the trustee of the Alpha Jockey Club. Not on the executive committee, but as a trustee I'm required to disclose that. So I'm happy to leave the room. Make it tidy.
I'm happy to leave the room.
Let's do that. Let's you and I go.
I'll go with
Mr
you.
Mayor, is that?
Well, hang on what basis, Councillor Peoples?
Well, when you're talking about racing, I hadn't thought about the Alpha Jockey Club receiving a donation for their race meeting and the president of the Central West Racing
Well, we've
Association.
just lost quorum. So,
Mr Mayor, I don't see it as a reason why the results, this is just receiving a report because we've already done the results.
no, this is the decision to give them the money. This is the actual resolution. Nothing's been done until this resolution today. So, right, I'm going to put this differently. Councillor, are you declaring this as a declarable COI?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put them as individually then, because cognizant of the fact that we have just lost quorum. Councillors, the resolution for whether each of the individual 3 councillors who are declaring here, Gillen, Gleeson and Peoples, will be dealt with individually. There will only be 3 councillors allowed to vote on that, and that is Hanson, Arthur and Plum.
And
No?
already
Councillor Rogers has a prescribed conflict of interest, so is excluded from any decision relating to any COIs relevant to this resolution. It could well be the case that if there were 6 of us, 1 councillor would determine the fate of all of us on this. That's the way the new legislation works. So I'm now going to put that Councillor Gleeson has declared a conflict of interest in this. Do I have a resolution as to whether he stays or goes, please?
Mr Mayor, the position that Councillor Gleeson holds is voluntary, unpaid.
100.
President of Lgaq and Camp Committee, and my daughter will be a beneficiary for the Barrels for Cause. She is the president of the Barrels for Cause.
Mr Mayor, the position he holds.
And your daughter, they're not paid, are they, for their roles? You are?
Voluntary roles.
And mine's definitely voluntary.
So,
Mine's a liability.
no, I'm just trying to differentiate
Definitely.
between Councillor Peoples, which has a tenuous business, paid profit-making connection whereas other councillors have a voluntary, community-based.
Councillor, do we have a resolution for Councillor Gleeson's involvement in 339?
I'm happy for Councillor Gleeson to stay. I'll second it.
Councillor Arthur moves that Councillor Gleeson remains in the room for both discussion and voting.
Yes.
Councillor Hanson seconds. Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Motion's carried 3-0. Unanimously, so the resolution can be updated later for that. It was a unanimous vote between Arthur, Plum and Hanson. Because I've got a declarable conflict of interest as well. Only those with no interest can participate in voting about the participation of each other councillor.
The councillors just through Mr. Mayor, so when vote is taken on these resolutions, we have to list the councillors and how they voted on the resolution.
We have a division on each one, effectively. Right, so Gleeson, you're staying. You don't get to vote on the others either, though. Yes, question?
No question. I have a declarable COI.
We've got to deal with others yet. Put me up. Councillor Dillon's declared that I have a COI, declarable COI on the basis of my role as a trustee for the Alpha Jockey Club. Can I have a resolution, please, as to whether I remain or leave?
Mr. Mayor, I put forward the same resolution. You can let us stay,
Second that same resolution.
participate in the conversation, the discussion and vote.
Moved by Councillor Arthur, seconded by Councillor Hanson, that Councillor Dillon remains in the room for the purposes of the discussion and voting on the resolution. I put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. Councillors Plum, Arthur and Hanson all in favour, 3-0. I now put Councillor Peoples' involvement in resolution 339 to the floor for stay or go resolution.
I'm going to change my position on it, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but the more I thought about it, there's a possibility that I may do business on that race day at that meeting, so I'll make it a prescribed COI and I will just leave the room anyway.
Okay, that's fine. That hasn't affected any of the result that we've just had of the votes because you wouldn't have been able to vote anyway as a prescribed. Right. Councillor Gleeson. Hang on, sorry, just let me check we're up to date. So that becomes a prescribed MPI for Councillor Peoples, 339. You're right, Alan?
Yeah.
Correct, you're right. Yep. Right, Councillor Gleeson, please carry on.
I have a declarable COI in District Manager's Report, item 3.91. It is only a report, but there is the mention of the Mark Holden campsite. The wording Mark Holden campsite is in the report. And then also in the capital projects report that we have just received.
Councillor, given those are information reports, if we delve into anything that affects the Buckle and Kemper, we declare that interest in moving or out if we require it.
Thank you.
I would consider, given that they're information reports, I would be quite happy to move that you remain in the room for the discussion of that at such time that eventuates. Councillor Hanson? Councillor Arthur? Thought I had that wrong then, but no, I got his right. Councillor Plum? Councillor Rogers? Councillor Dillon has already been placed. Councillors, are any of you aware of any potential undisclosed declared conflicts of interest? Councillor Peoples, finally you get to your personal gifts and benefits for you to disclose if you would so wish.
Well, just on that advice that we had during that training, Mr. Mayor, that you should declare it early, so I'd like to declare that I am president of the Central West Racing Association, where I sit on the Country Racing Board, and I will receive
Constant travel and accommodation.
travel and accommodation over the period that that was explained in the training, and I'll declare that I am on that board at this meeting today.
And in receipt of benefits that exceed the reportable threshold.
I think so.
Thank you. Any other gifts and benefits exceeding the threshold? Being none. Back to the bad old days, aren't we? Back to the executive office. 25 minutes and we have not moved a single resolution other than the procedures. Right. Councillors, for the first time in 6 months, I've remembered that the first resolution is the confirmation of minutes. Can I have somebody move that we receive the minutes of the September meeting? Moved Councillor Hanson, seconded Councillor Plum. Those in favour? Carried 7-0. Questions, alterations, omissions, additions? None. Can I have somebody move that we confirm the minutes, please? Moved Councillor Gleeson, seconded Councillor Plum. Any discussion? None. All in favour? Carried 7-0. Petitions. Councillors, it is my pleasure to present a petition on behalf of a number of Barcaldine businesses for the record. We just formally enter it into the record. Today, the 27th of October. Sorry. The date that we dated. Can I have a resolution to receive the petition, please? I will move that we receive the petition. Sorry, second. Councillor Peoples, those in favour? Against? Carried 7-0. I'll hold reading the preamble of that because, councillors, the notice of motion that I submitted, I'd like to ask council to agree to move standing orders to receive a notified motion, which is currently agenda item, notified motions being agenda item 311. If I could have a resolution to suspend standing orders and receive and deal with the notice of motion as our first order of business. Moved Councillor Hanson, seconded Councillor Arthur. Discussion? There being none, put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. 7-0. Councillors, before I address the actual wording in the background report of that notice of motion, will be on the screen in a moment. Just read the very brief preamble to the petition. Attention, Barcaldine Regional Council, reclosure of Barcaldine Showgrounds for camping/caravans. The following business owners and operators petition the Barcaldine Regional Council to reopen the Barcaldine Showgrounds immediately to accommodate visiting campers and caravans and attract and increase overnight visitor expenditure to the Barcaldine region. Signed business owners or operators benefit from having the showgrounds open, and given that the COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted and a year that we have just experienced, see no reason why the council has closed the showground for camping. We have already experienced a downturn in our business. I'll pass the petition around for individual noting. Councillors, the background to this, as I alluded out of session to you yesterday why I was bringing this, is aware that it is 3 weeks until our next meeting. Your ability to react to this, should that be your desire to do so, would have been severely limited given the delay in this. So I've brought the resolution to you today. I've also I brought a resolution to you today to address this petition, to give you the possibility to address it today. I've also circulated in writing to you a copy of the Barcaldine Showground camping policy. I will ask officers to provide further information if it is required. In the background material that will be, because this is a late agenda item, the background material will be circulated to the public as a report with the minutes, as is the new requirements around transparency, which I have no problem with providing. We outline in that material the extraordinary lengths that we went to provide immediate support and relief to our commercial caravan parks immediately during and post the easing of restrictions. This council's discussed that and moved resolutions, and even including indirect by way of fencing the rest area. So today, the way I view it, if your decision, you can defer this quite easily to a future meeting to take further time for consultation, and that will not procedurally alter anything. But I just brought it to you today with that material for you to just consider what you want to do, and it may be do nothing, it may be delay it, and it may be just whatever. So it's on the floor, it's not moved. Happy to discuss this as we move.
Mr. Mayor, can I interject?
Yes, well, you don't interject, you get to comment.
Or can comment? Does Councillor Hanson have a declarable or prescribed COI saying that Barclay Bakery signed the petition?
Has he signed it as well?
No, Councillor Hanson hasn't, but Joe still works at the Barclay Bakery.
Councillor Hanson.
I will put that in the hands of the other councillors, because I really don't know. I was actually unaware.
I didn't agree.
No, well, just to clarify, Joe hasn't signed it, but the bakery is a named business on the petition.
If I was to give you some advice, councillor, rather than anything else, I would suggest that for the purposes of he's here, it may be better if up to you. We can't actually, well, we can raise a prescribed conflict of interest. That's what this is. So we're aware of it now, councillors. Do I have a resolution here? Councillor Henson set it up to, he's putting it in our hands because he's not sure. I'm fine with all the resolutions we've moved to date because that petition is only just being circulated now, so I'm fine that Councillor Henson's there with suspending standing orders.
I am quite willing to leave the room if that's.
Councillors?
Mr. Mayor, I'd see it as a prescribed conflict due to it being Councillor Hanson's wife's business or employer.
Councillor Teagle?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to tell Councillor Hanson what to do, but if it was
You
me,
actually have to.
if it was me, I'd be leaving the room.
You will actually have to, unless he volunteers, you'll have to vote on it.
If it was me, I'd be leaving the room, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gleeson?
Feel as though I've got to agree with Councillor Pickles. Be more open and transparent. Councillor Hanson might have to leave the room.
Yeah,
Councillor Rogers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Looks like you're going to have to find the door, Councillor Hanson, sorry. So, Councillor Hanson's volunteering a prescribed conflict of interest. Right, back here, yeah. So, right, thoughts, comments. The resolution there is that we reopen it, like the draft that I just put together so we had something to discuss, is that the showgrounds overnight camping as per our normal fees and charges until the 17th of December 2020. The reason for the 17th is that coincides with the outside workforce shutdown in Buckhorn, or everywhere this year. To give you a chance to think, officers have any feedback? Acting CEO?
Obviously, this has been a very long-running issue for council since, ever since I've worked for council, it's been an issue. Councillors, we've had going 12 years ago, we had the ombudsman report. Out of that, there was a land management use agreement. There's the state government secondary use of showgrounds policy that we have to comply with. And then we have council's own Barclay showgrounds camping policy. By this resolution, I don't think contravenes any of the requirements in terms of any of those. It's a matter of amending the current council policy. And so the whole issue of camping arose when the commercial caravan parks objected to council operating a caravan park in competition to the commercial operators. So as a result of that, council was changed from a caravan park to a camping area. We closed the laundromat. We ceased advertising showgrounds as a camping area. So all of that is in compliance with those requirements for the use of the showgrounds. So the showgrounds go right back, showgrounds is owned by the state government. It's a reserve for showgrounds and recreation. So the primary use of that land has to be for showgrounds and recreation. The secondary use is camp. So if there's a sporting event, that has to take priority over camping. Show, Westec, anything involved shows, any sporting events have to take priority, which is why we close it for camping during those periods. So there's nothing to preclude council from using those grounds as a camping area. And the other condition that was applied is that we have to charge a fee similar to what the commercial parks charge.
Through you, Mr Mayor. With that motion you have there, the council reopens the park and showground for overnight camping, that means it could be 2 or 3 nights, just not overnight. So now I'm happy to move that motion.
I just want to point out one other fact that is within the material I circulated to you on Monday night. This is the first year, the history of this is it would normally remain open until the 1st of November, District Manager Lawrence. This is the first year where we've enacted the closure of the 1st of October, isn't it? That policy only changed last year.
November last year, council adopted that.
That's correct. So ordinarily it would have always been open in the month of October anyway. It's now going to be effectively shut for the whole of October. We're reopening it for November and part of December. So we really, if you look at the status quo, this is actually reverting back to the way we had it prior to that alteration last year. You're happy to move?
I'm happy to move that motion.
Councillor Peoples moves. I'm not going to shut discussion on this straight away. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Gleeson. Thank you, Councillor. I just want to ensure that I don't keep anybody silent. Did you have a view on this, Councillor? You seconded it. Do you have a view on this, Councillor Arthur, that you want to discuss or raise or?
No, I'm for the motion.
For it? Yeah. Councillor Rodgers, have you got any thoughts?
I just think that with the year that we've had anyway, the more that we can do to help the overall businesses, the majority of the businesses now on forward.
Okay. That's fine, councillors. It would appear that we have, I can put it to the vote, or unless you want to sum up, Councillor Peoples.
Don't need to sum up, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Etc. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Hanson. He's up and deaf. Councillor. We will. We didn't put an opening date on that, District Manager Lawrence, but that'll be your ability to get that reopened. Obviously, to gear up a little bit for that.
Yeah, to Mr Mayor, I probably would I can see if they can organise cleaners for the weekend.
Yeah, it's in operational hands as to when that happens. Right, do we need to have yes, can I have a resolution please that we return to standing orders? Councillor Peoples, Councillor Arthur, those in favour, carried 7-0. I move that we receive my report. I have a seconder please. Councillor Hanson, those in favour, carried. Only other meeting I'll add to this that occurred after this went to print. Hanson. I moved. Hanson second. Sorry, Hayley. The only verbal addition that I will add is I met yesterday with a gentleman from CHCC, Monday, Matt McIntyre. The addition I'll add to this, he's championing a clean growth choices sort of initiative that the Central Highlands put together, known as, and the acting CEO met as well. Food and Fibre Plus. It's looking at a lot of the same things we've been discussing with QUT around futuristic opportunities for agricultural investment and development in the region. He asked whether our council, with the Rapid has become a stakeholder in that, he asked whether our council would like to have a delegate on the steering committee. I indicated most definitely yes. It'll be an officer level involvement. All the other councils are the same. So Brett's delegating that to a suitable officer to attend and receive updates where that program is at. It just further enhances our continued involvement in innovation in investment around agricultural pursuits. Nothing may come of it, everything may come of it. It doesn't really cost us to be involved in it, and it certainly keeps us at the table of innovation as we move over the next few years. So if there's anything specific to come out of that, you will see future reference to anything in that program via the Economic Development Report, Brett, I would suggest. Yep. And the other thing I did do that's not actually articulated, but I did meet with the acting deputy CEO, the acting CEO, District Manager Alpha, and myself met with a representative of IOR, the fuel distribution company, with respect to the potential for fuel supply to council. That's now been delegated back to officer level involvement. Otherwise, my report speaks for itself. Happy to take questions. You'll see, the Lgaq conference, we'll speak to that during the day. One very moving and one very engaging audio-visual presentation about some awards that were received. We'll actually formally note here in a moment. And we're also going to see some discussion around a Bush Council's compact. Broadly, the Lgaq conference I thought was on topics quite successful. I was disappointed with the level of debate around resolutions. There was limited opportunity to speak in, not procedurally, just it seemed other delegates didn't really want to get into discussing either side of it. So there was a couple of issues that our council had a strong view to the contrary, but we never got a chance to speak because there weren't enough speakers in favour of a resolution. So I would actually suggest it was probably the lowest quality of debate that I've seen at a local government conference. Part of that may be there was a lot of very new delegates there, very high turnover of delegates this year, even though they go on about the stability in local government. There was a lot of new mayors there, even if we weren't new to local government. A lot of first time, such as Councillor Arthur and Central Highlands had 2 first time councillors there. So there was a little bit of, let's just sit back and see how the day and the week unfolded. One thing I will speak to, and I intend to follow up more, Jenny and other librarian managers as well, is the Moreton Shire Regional Council has an initiative known as Backstage Pass. I think my co-councillors were in the resources forum that day, is that right? So we missed it. I saw it. They presented at the same time as council did. It's about using our library facilities. It's a very successful program. Now they obviously have numbers of people who are challenged in areas of autistic and Down syndrome, but it's about out of hours access to libraries for specific capacity building. It may not be something we can do out of hours, but it may be something we can look to expand upon some of the stuff that we already do in some of our libraries, and we may be able to share both resources and intellect. So I'm going to get some more information about that circulated to you to share with your librarians and see, because it was the other moving one that I referred to. The work they're doing there for hundreds and hundreds of kids is very, very good work, and it's funded. That's the other thing. It's fully funded via a number of different streams, and it intersects quite well with the work.
It was 200 staff, wasn't it?
Correct.
So it's got 200 staff.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't have 200 staff in our entire organisation, and but just because big councils do things doesn't mean we can't just on a scalable approach look at some of the initiatives they do. But Outback Futures we presented just before them, and Selena was instantly thinking there was quite a lot that even her program could potentially learn from what they're doing there. So over the next few months, I intend to meet with Morton and see what I can glean out of that may be of some benefit for our community. Stay tuned for that. There was an election for the presidency of Lgaq, and the Mayor of Sunshine Coast, Mark Jamieson, won that. And he and the CEO of Lgaq will be here at our next meeting on the 18th. They will be here. We'll formally receive them as a deputation for a meal and to share some time with us and thoughts about the local government space. All in all, your delegation represented you very well. Acting CEO and Councillor Peoples and Arthur spread themselves around the trade display well, met with some consultants and suppliers of council. All in all, we've got a very good, solid delegation, and we were very prominent through a lot of the forums. Have I missed anything, councillors, that we are about to discuss later? Bit of
One
follow-up.
comment I would add was your presentation to talk to the Lgaq, which you briefly touched on. Yeah.
And the other one that I gave that these councillors didn't see is I briefly added to a presentation from QTC regarding the buy-up program, but that was done for the smaller council, like our style of councils. Councillor Peoples and Arthur attended the Resources Councils Forum at the same time, which we always try to do, have a foot in both camps there. Or did you not? Did you come to that one?
I went to the sport.
No, that was early in the day, the second day. You might have come to the QTC one. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
But that's one thing I would like to mention is the forum we went to with regards to money for sport presently. They said there's an enormous amount of money out there at the moment, and I think it's an area that we probably, Mr. Mayor, have to tap in and get some more information, because
Good thing for some follow-up before our first pre-budget workshop on the 17th of November.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add from the conference? All right, any questions for anything else in my report? We have somebody move the CEO's report, please. Acting CEO's report. Councillor Plum, Councillor Gleeson, in favour, 7-0. Brett, anything to draw to our attention before I ask a question? Questions?
I just raise, Mr. Mayor, the external audit is still in progress, so we have to sign that off by Friday this week. Still have a few small issues to resolve for the auditors, so just waiting on that to be completed. That has been a very long and arduous process. Our staff have put in a lot of effort to get through that audit process. Felt worse than any other year that we've been audited. I think I can safely say that. But and a lot of it's to do with change in accounting standards and just new requirements and support it. But so for the November meeting, we'll present the annual report to council with the audited financial statements. Of that's where council will adopt the audited financial statements.
Any questions for the CEO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and happy to talk about it further on because it does pop its head up in the first quarter review. Airport fuel negotiations with GBO, the maintenance company, for a 10-year maintenance plan for the Jet A1 tank. We're currently working on our airport management plan. It's in the pipelines, is it not?
More generally, like all encompassing.
Will that form part of it, or, and are we looking at contracts and user agreements for those parts of our facilities?
So like cafes and
Oh, the fuel, how the fuel, because from the last two meetings, the paperwork or the structure around the fuel tanks and seems to be a little bit light on.
Mr. Mayor, we are, when this year we budgeted to prepare an asset management plan for our airports. So that will be part of it. So as part of that, we identify all the assets at the airports. And this includes all of our airports, not just Barcaldine, who the users are, what the maintenance costs are. One of the issues that we've had with Barcaldine is because it's been, once again, the airports are reserved, so its own part. It's funny because part of it's a reserve, part of it's freehold. But all the infrastructure was on the reserve land. So a few years ago we resolved to purchase and freehold that part of the land that is under all our structures. So now the hangars, the terminal, the fuel storage is all on freehold land owned by council. Now we can go through that process of actually having user agreements with all the users, not just the fuel but the hangars. So you've got the same situation that, like, if something happened to a hangar, for example, who would actually own it and who was responsible for it? Because originally some of the hangars were ergon. People built their own. I know Tom Fisher built one way back. So yes, there is a lot of uncertainty about who owns what at the airport.
so your expectation is that the asset management plan will pick up on specific things, especially around maintenance and operational capacity. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
You said an airport management plan.
I just think we need some more rigour around some of the things that have popped its head up in the last couple of months with respect to that, in particular Barcaldine Airport, but I would say there are similar, as you say, scale issues to some of our smaller airports. And it's a risk to council that
Mr. Mayor, this is why we freeholded the land in the first place, because the issues came up. Actually, Ergon wanted to sell their hangar. And they said, well, who owns it? So it was all very unclear, so then we made the decision to freehold the land, which we've done now. Now we need to get agreements with all the users about who owns what. Even Qantas Link, they have a room there, but what's the agreement for using that?
I appreciate it's not a quick, simple overnight fix. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions?
Mr. Mayor, can I get a refresher with regards to the $2 million loan?
Which is in the CIB as well, yes.
Yes. Where did we earmark all that for, or are we still working out what we're going to earmark?
Go, Brett. Mr. Mayor, the loan was earmarked for the telemetry at SCADA, 1.2 million, and the balance was for the upgraded sewage treatment plant at Barcaldine.
The water offtake arrangements
That's the water to go.
bound to the showgrounds.
Yeah, depending on, we have to get the quotes for the telemetry at SCADA. I'm not sure what.
And with the SCADA, what actually happens there again, Brett? What's
Mr. Mayor, the existing telemetry in SCADA's old, parts of it don't work anymore. So some of the SCADA stuff runs, say, the water treatment plants in Alpha and Jericho, and our water distribution in other places. And the telemetry basically puts it back to where you can look at it on an iPad. So it's
It's just all electronic works and
It is, yeah.
so to set it up.
And we're all running it properly.
Okay.
So some of the issues we've been having with Jericho and Alpha water treatment.
So is there pipe work or anything that goes into that too?
It's basically the electronic stuff that runs it all.
Right.
Just the $1.2 million worth of electronics. Okay.
And that's why, Mr. Mayor, we have to get the quotes about,
And it may come in under that.
to see what's required. But Alpha and Jericho is critical because we have to treat the water.
That's the more pressing concern.
And that needs to be controlled, where at the moment it's.
I understand how critical that is. Just the 1.2 million is a lot of money too.
Which is the point that I made, and I can't take all the credit for well, I'm not attempting to take the credit for the loan being approved, but the reason behind, given that the credit rating, which we can also discuss in the CIB, but the credit rating didn't move from where it was 2 years ago, but what we're actually borrowing the money for and the work officers did on, especially Rick, on proving the critical nature and the reason for these upgrades and the failure around, the issues it would have raised around failure, both for the sewage treatment plant equally to the water treatment plants, because both, have disastrous side effects if they're not handled correctly, was integral, and I believe in the government approving the loan because it is for key community infrastructure that is genuinely generational. It's not a 5 minute, it's not for a shiny toy or a, community asset that, yes, will enhance the community, but is it as integral to its operation as water and sewerage? That is the bedrock of what we do. I pitched it very clearly to the Treasurer and to the Minister for Local Government that we weren't asking for a handout. We were prepared to do the work, do it the way we wanted to do it. We needed to do it effectively and efficiently. We couldn't wait for them to work out what they're doing, that $500 million rural wastewater guarantee. It was deemed by our engineering team as imminent failure, especially in terms of SCADA and water treatment in Alpha. And we had imminent threat of substantial fines around sewage treatment plant Barcaldine. Plus we had need to save water and all of that. So I think the argument was well received that, this is what we should be borrowing money to local governments for. Yes, it's a lot of money, but paid off over 20 years on the current rate of interest. Much better than if we took a $2 million hit on cash.
Right.
Further questions for Brett?
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Plum?
I just want to say that there wasn't much of a smile on CEO's face with regards to the audit report, but going by what the auditors have said, that they have done a wonderful job, our staff, to get to where we are, and the auditors did state that the only little red light is that area where it's a change of programs, and I really think our staff have done a wonderful job, and the auditors thank them for their support. So in saying that,
Thank you, Audit Committee Chair. Very good. He didn't have a smile on his face at all, did he?
No, he didn't. I was watching and I'm thinking, I better just say that, wonderful job, and supporting the auditors and getting us to where we are.
Thank you. Councillor Peters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the donations we've made to the Cure and the Right West, what were they?
Two to Cure was, we saw them on dark 30 in the morning. I leave home at 2 o'clock to make it here because my executive assistants very kindly booked me to be there, which was very nice of them. So Brett and I saw them off. What they are is they're a couple from Biloela who have ridden all over Australia raising Cure money for cancer.
Okay.
And the second one I wasn't present before, but Councillors Arthur and others were. The Chandler guys riding for, what do they ride for? Ride West.
Yeah.
It's for cancer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
How much did you donate?
Sorry, mental health with the RFDS.
Oh,
It's for RFDS,
Yeah.
the Right West one,
Yeah.
and two of the Cures.
And what we donate then?
Under the $500. Limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, cash, okay.
I'm lucky Brett and I saw off to a cure because nobody else got out of bed to do it.
Oh,
And it was raining.
It was raining, which was fine by me. I'm not made of sugar like the big CEO is, but he was going to melt. Any more questions? Councillor information correspondence. Also had a change in title from CIB. Is that right?
Yes, Mr Mayor, just with the change in the new legislation that came in on the 12th of October, as it's now a public agenda, change the focus here so that it is a bit more transparent about what it is.
Can I have somebody move that we received the report? Councillor Peoples and Gleeson seconds. In favour? 7-0. I just can briefly move through and then ask for questions. I won't comment on ones that I think speak for themselves. The e-hills and road signage, number 11, I'm happy to write back to that ratepayer on council's behalf and just indicate that not a council sanctioned activity. We're not partaking in it. Ratepayers concerned about it from a littering point of view. I'm happy just to indicate that it's not a council sanctioned activity on your behalf unless you suggest otherwise. And item 12, the sale and replacement of the 21-seater bus. That item is not agenda for discussion at this meeting, but we will hold that correspondence for full consideration when that comes up.
That's fair. District manager and I have a meeting with the school principal this week.
There's no urgency required in that decision, so let's get all the information from the key stakeholders and we'll fully consider that at a future meeting. As has been circulated to councillors, Ergon Energy has agreed to the seasonal allocation of water, which will allow Buckhorn Recreation Park to proceed. We'll have an inspection of that at lunchtime. Yeah. Anyway, questions regarding the rest of it? Councillor Peoples.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the funding applications and the approved grants for the rail trail, what's the way forward there?
Rick, that's the TMR money for the rail trail.
So that is the money to do the business case, to prepare a plan of how we would do the trail, do some mapping.
This is the Arnhem Trail.
Yes, from Barkhorn to Aramac.
And who manages that project? Is that council or TMR?
Council.
Council.
TMR's funding it.
And we're running it, is that right?
So it's 100% funded by TMR. But yeah, totally council run.
And what's our intention there, to appoint someone to do that, or we do it through GBA? Or?
It's through GBA.
Through
So
GBA.
GBA gave us a quote before we applied for the funding.
Right.
And so we used that quote to do the application, the funding application. That's been approved.
And the cycle, did you have a question about it, Gary?
Yeah, the other ones there, Brett, the cycle network, local government grants, they're also there in the letter for
that's a continuation of the cycle networks that are already in progress. So TMR statewide have created the principal cycle networks.
Mr Mayor, do I have an issue here with this?
Not at this point. We're talking generally about funding.
Just step back from the table.
No, there's no. I'm listening with interest here, but I think at this stage we're right.
So, Mr Mayor, the CMR has created these, what they call principal cycle networks throughout Queensland. So Barcall and Aramac and Alpha are eligible to be part of that. Fortunately, Muttaburra and Jericho aren't because of their population size. So we've already started that project in terms of Gidgee Street at Barcall. So this is to do another block in Gidgee Street in Aramac.
Is this the widening of footpaths and stuff that we're doing?
Concrete footpaths.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll
The
continue
concrete
that.
cycle paths, they're cycle paths.
Cycle paths. Yes, definitely cycle paths. So they have to be 2.5 metres wide. Can't be any obstructions. And then in Alpha, we've done from Shire Hall round to the main street, and then that's going to continue. In which direction?
Mr Mayor, we've actually got the next section of it will be at the Settlers Park, so they will join up from the highway. And so from the highway back to Dryden Street. So then that'll link back to where we go past the office and then back around to the hospital. That way there as well.
Keeps the cyclists off the Cap Highway.
And this is an ongoing program, so this funding will come up every year. So we'll just keep adding each year. There'll be another section we'll add to it. Cycle networks.
Any further questions on push bikes, councillor? Any other questions about any other correspondence?
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Rogers.
the legal opinion letter
On engineering services.
on engineering services, what's everyone's thoughts on? Is it a possible problem for us?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's a general mail out that they remind all councils every now and then that you need to have an RPQ to sign off agree to any changes that are outside standards. So that's a general mail out one. I think there was a tour by possibly the Board of Professional Engineers through the West in recent months as well, so coincides with that.
Mr Mayor, it was briefly touched on LGAQ complex.
Yeah.
The
Councillors,
reason you have me.
yeah, exactly. I mean, councillors weren't on the last council. That is that correspondence is exactly why we had an operational change. Key driver towards changing our structure, where construction workforce go underneath the line management of engineering. That piece of advice was the key reason. There was others, but that was the key one. Interrupt you there, CEO. I will be, no, make a note of it now, Jess or Harley. If somebody could organise, I will arrange a virtual meeting with the Director of the Prevention of Council for Domestic and Family Violence. So very powerful presentation shortly. I will ask to meet with them and as they've invited, and we'll see what links we can do on that front. So that correspondence is quite recent. Okay.
Can they just note the Jericho State School presentation night?
Yeah, councillors can respond individually to that. Council will be participating in the sponsorship of book prizes, district manager, but if individual councillors want to, that is your opportunity. It's not today to do Jericho. Now, 333, please. Can I have somebody move that we receive the annual operational Q1 report, Councillor Plum, seconded Councillor Hanson. Those in favour, carried. Now I'm just going to have to go to the CAN. Is the updated version in the CAN, Brett?
Yes.
So this version in our agenda,
Sorry, Mr Mayor, councillors, where the version that was sent out, the agenda had some of the columns cut off, so resent,
Which I advised you about, Councillor Peoples, on Monday night.
you what, sorry, Mr
I
Mayor?
advised all councillors of that on Monday night.
I must have been listening to you, Mr Mayor.
It was in writing on
No,
your
I
email,
wasn't. I
Councillor
read
Peoples.
You didn't quite go over the top.
Okay, so it's a separate report in the CAN, not the one that's within our agenda. So if you go to the CAN, see it. Brett, Greg, anyone like to draw, Jenny, anyone like to draw our attention to anything here?
I have a general question for anything that's red.
Okay, well, let's just start at the start and work through those. Page 2, there's a red light next to the new corporate plan, simply because it hasn't started, officers.
Yes, Mayor, so basically use the traffic light system. Anything that's red's either not started or it's not proceeding, so I suppose I should create another colour for those two situations. But so, yeah, so the corporate plan, obviously we haven't started that, so that's a red line. Maybe that should create it.
Right, well, we'll quickly identify them anyway. Paula, Aramac Administration, Disability Access and Improvements is red. Is that just because it hasn't started? It hasn't started, so it's proceeding.
Next one's AQTA,
which we're working with. Yep, we're still awaiting for that to be addressed.
Economic Development Board establishment.
Just haven't. No impetus and drive yet on that one. Security screen. Okay, well, that's changed for obvious reasons. The rules changed after we turned our plan down.
So with the security screen, we have received our notice that no longer have screen barcode report.
So that'll stay red for the whole year. Chief Engineer, bridge inspections and safety assessments, it's not scheduled to happen yet.
It is, Mr Mayor, that's under contract through that regional waste transport group.
So it hasn't happened yet, but it's going to, so there's probably an amber in future. Rural roads rehab.
No, that's the R2R
Yep. So that one and the town streets is combined together for R2R, so that's what we'll decide on where that goes shortly. Aramac Pool car park seal. Yep. So I'm guessing some of these things are going to be red just because we can't do everything in the first quarter, which is probably why a separate colour would be beneficial, like purple for it's permanently paused, red it just hasn't started yet. Improvements to council depot, sorry, that's the amber. Aramac depot oil separator, just haven't purchased it yet.
It's on the way, Mr Mayor.
And that's the amber. Alpha depot washdown bay, that definitely hasn't started, but it will. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Water solar installations, water SCADA and telemetry,
It's spoken to.
repairs to old bores. That's here.
That's just a $20,000 budget for things that come up, like one just now.
Right. SCADA and telemetry we've spoken to. Yes, I think this is good that we go through this. This is what a review is, so bear with us. Buckhall and Waste Landfill. Now that's red because it hasn't started, but it's actually really amber. Rick, I've seen that you've done advanced planning towards that.
We're starting to
Can we circulate
run it
that?
on procurement.
Can we just circulate that plan, what the outlook of that could be to councillors, please? Waste management, environmental obligations, compliance with DES licence conditions is a red KPI. that hopefully switches to a green very quickly. Is that right? So we're not currently complying because we are discharging.
That's right. That's why that's red, so that's a definite red.
That is a red, we're in failure there. Stop me as we go here, councillors. 2 pages down, Jubilee Park improvements. Is it red?
That's lighting.
Library improvements, Barkballen and Muddaborough. To be action later. In progress. Aramak Tramway Museum carriage restoration. This week. Wow. Barkballen Camp Draft building improvements, Jenny.
Petitions have been ordered, we're waiting delivery.
Barkballen Showground sound system.
Had a meeting with Macrosphere last week. Need to speak to the acting CEO. And I'll speak directly to the next one as well. Purchase order has been done for the painting of the grandstand 6.
Aramak Hall external upgrades.
Builder had a look at it yesterday and be on the vendor panel next week.
And that's the report.
So it's maybe not as bad as the traffic lights.
No, I think there's probably a fair degree of cautious honesty in those traffic lights. Like the work hasn't actually finished, but there's stuff going on there, obviously. That's very good, officers. I'm actually impressed with that system. I think it's good.
I'll add an extra colour, Mr. Mayor, flag, so that red means it's not going to happen or we're not compliant. And another colour for
Just hasn't started.
started. Yeah.
Some of those red ones have even actually started, they just haven't finished. So they're probably, anyway, we're learning with that. That's the first time we've actually done that. Please thank you, District Managers, for your guidance.
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a few other questions, please?
Councillor Speaker. Mike.
With the sewer upgrades in Aramak and Muddaborough, they're still out into a future year, is that where we're looking at that, Rick?
Have we received the report yet from Carbon and Water? Water and Carbon, sorry.
I've had a number of meetings with them, Mr. Mayor. We've got a solution for the Muddaborough one. We just need Department of Law and Science to sign off on it, where we can not discharge to a water course. And that's similar to the Barkballen one. Aramak's a little more difficult, and we're still working through that with Department of Law and Science. The guy who we were dealing with, he's left. And I don't think there was a particularly good handover inside their department. We're starting from scratch again with the new fellow. A bit frustrating.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I just get a mention here that they're part of our operation and fix those things?
Well, they're not actually part of this annual operational plan, are they? When we adopted this plan with the budget, those items weren't in this year's, they were in the out years.
Righto.
So this plan links to the budget for the year 2021, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So that those items would appear in the 21-22 because they're not budgeted to occur this year.
Okay.
Am I right, officers? Sorry, I'll hold the check that I'm right there. Is that why the other two aren't in this plan? When we set the budget, we were dealing with this one first and doing optioneering for. Thank you. Yep.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, the difference with Muddaborough, the quote that we got from Water and Carbon to do the testing as per Department of Environment and Science, which was around about $40,000, we can actually fix the whole thing for the same amount. So our option is that we put theirs is don't do the testing, we'll just fix what it is. And that's what we put to them, and the previous guy agreed to that, but it didn't get through the system, and now we're negotiating that with the new person.
Under vibrant communities with regards to health and wellbeing with our key operational activities there, we're just providing high quality programs including CHSP, HAS 60 and better, MOW. NDIS is getting that big. Should we put that in there too? Unless you've got it somewhere else.
Well, we would need to formally amend, I've got no problem with it being included. We would need to actually formally amend our operational plan to include that, because this is the one that we passed them 3 months ago. So,
Okay,
you know what I mean? Like, we're not actually amending, we can, but we'll bring it as a motion for the next, well, we can deal with it now. Somebody wants to move that we include NDIS as a list.
Just make sure.
Can we deal with that in November?
you can,
Thank you.
no problem. The only other
So
thing,
finding it now.
yeah, the only other thing there, Mr Mayor, is that I know that we probably haven't earmarked it in our budget, but we have talked about caravan parks doing a bit of work in this financial year. And that's not in there anywhere at all either.
Well, it probably wasn't earmarked when we handed this
it
plan
wasn't.
down.
It wasn't.
There can be subsequent revisions around new stuff if we require it.
Okay.
Any more? Councillor Gleeson.
Mr Mayor, is it an appropriate time to ask the question? On the 16th of the 10th, we received an email that the approved work scheme that from the CEO that we had funding of $1.2 million, and the some of that money was going out to Maribor and waste landfill and that. The question I would like to try and ask is, we had already budgeted for that to happen, and now we have an extra 1.2 million.
No, we don't have an extra 1.2. We had that 1.2 when we handed the budget down. We knew it wasn't there, and we had to submit our projects for approval, so we knew we had the 1.2. It wasn't extra money.
All right, so it was in the approval, but this is just a notification to say that it has
that it applies. So when we handed the budget down, we allocated that extra COVID money from the federal and Works for Queensland, the two different buckets of money. We just scattered it all over the place, and then we had to formally submit those projects for approval to the federal government and to the state government that we'd allocated. We had to move some sideways, but the money, the Works for Queensland money and the federal LRCI money, we had full awareness of that when we handed the budget down. So that notification wasn't that that's $1.2 million worth of savings from money that we budgeted to spend of our own.
Thank you.
Whether it was the exact project that was identified in June with the budget, I can't say without going through it in detail and looking, and you may be able to, but by and large it was pretty well representative of what we indicated, had it not.
So, Mr Mayor, right, we knew we were getting the money when we passed the budget, adopted the budget, but we didn't know, I suppose, what the conditions were. So when we actually got the funding conditions came out, we did have to reallocate some of the money, but it was for existing budget projects. So the projects in the budget haven't changed, but how they're funded, there has been some rearrangement between Works for Queensland, federal LRCIP money. The only extra money that we have received is in the federal budget early October. We were allocated another $907,000. That hasn't been allocated, which is why we're having a budget workshop the day before the next council meeting.
It's all right, I just read it wrong.
Yeah. So you haven't read it wrong. We didn't have formal approval when we adopted our budget, but we had notionally allocated funding from those sources pending approval. I'm just trying to find.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you in your budget, if you want to have a look later on, just refer to the final column, the funding source, and you'll see where we notionally allocated those grants prior to approval. We did that so that we could identify how much cash we were going to use of our own. And look, most of our capital is actually funded, substantially funded. So your question yesterday, I didn't pick up on exactly what you meant, but I get it today.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Just following on from the question I asked there before about the $2 million loan and $800,000 going to the reuse of the sewage water. When we look here at our operational plan, there's $1.4 million for the cost of that reuse.
Mhm.
600,000 we're short with regard to that 1.4 million.
No.
That's coming from the local government grants and subsidies
That's
program.
That's the,
LGGSP that was originally for the Buckhorn swimming pool that was transferred to the Buckhorn Recreation Park that was transferred to the Buckhorn Sewerage.
so that water reuse is fully funded.
Correct.
Thank you.
Significant degree of effort went into getting that LGGSP reallocated. I thank the Minister for his discretion to do so. Questions? 334. Economic Development Report for October. Can I ask the to receive that, please? Councillor Gleeson, Councillor Hines. Those in favour? Carried. Questions?
Mr Mayor, back to the Economic Development Board. Aren't these sort of somewhat hand in hand? And what's the lack of drive behind the establishment of that board? Good question.
It's sat in our budget for 3 years and no one's ever done anything with it. Effectively, I'll give that, it was former Mayor Chandler's idea of, and he championed it to get it in the budget, and then it just never seemed to get up, to create a board of, recognisable experts that need not be locals, but are, and you need a sum of money to perhaps get them in for meetings or whatever. And it just really hasn't, our focus has been individualised and staff, and there's probably no reason. It's just that someone hasn't said, well, how are we going to do it? And bring a resolution to a meeting and say, well, this is what we want to develop in this board. That's the only reason why. I guess in other communities that are bigger and have more sustainable investment, they have chambers of commerce.
Yes.
That would probably do the role for what this board was envisaged to have. The other thing is you're either going to have the board and have it proactive and positive and involved, or you don't. Maybe we question whether, have a more stringent debate or a more detailed debate around whether it'll work or it won't work. It's probably just carried over in successive budgets, hoping that someone will pick it up and run with it, but it just hasn't.
So does it, at this point in time, it's literally just a line item on the budget? It doesn't have a charter or a mandate?
No, nothing at all. It's just a thought, with all due respect, it's just a thought bubble. Difficult one to articulate when you sit, I have sat and thought about it. What focus do you put on it? How do you, and if you want to really resource and empower a board like that, you probably need 100,000. You probably need paid directors who are going to actually genuinely follow through with it. Pro bono stuff's great, but it can be limited somewhat, if it's not their primary focus, especially if they're not residents.
Yes,
whose
correct.
focus could be elsewhere. So, neither the devil nor the deep blue sea, really, it's, probably one that we need to thrash out through.
It might be a thought for future budgets to either increase the budget for this or convert it over to our economic development.
Effectively, for my time on council, the Economic Development Board for the Buckhorn Regional Council sitting in this room, between our offices and the collective use of this room, and both the last council and this council's got varying degrees of business expertise and industry experience. You could argue that this room's as good as anyone you put together, short of spending $150,000 and putting together a genuine skills-based board. But then once again, are you going to get anything less representative than what's in this room anyway? You've got professional engineers, ex-government employees, ex-grader operators, cattle producers, artists, accountants, golf players. More business investment being done on golf courses than any boardroom in Australia. Don't laugh about it, Damien. We might need to send you out there to seal a multi-billion-dollar deal one day. Just don't play so good, you've got to let them beat you. I have digressed, but that's where we're...
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Any comments on this?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The part you read, it says that engage GBA to undertake flora and fauna review of the town common to identify any threatened species. That sounds good. I think it's a great idea, but the botanical park or the botanical park, not a committee but group, they are also looking at getting someone to do that same thing. So I was just wondering whether it's not
I think it'd be a perfect
the
opportunity to share
opportunity
it.
to actually share it. I think Will Green is actually going to volunteer to do that. He was volunteering his time, but like if they could put that together, one of the main concerns of Botanical Garden Park is that the motorbike tracks are going to somehow get in the way. So if that could be fine, that'd be a great way to keep everyone happy.
So, Mr. Mayor, I've had a meeting with Morgan Ronald last week, and we put a hold on that activity at this stage, from the Barkey Red point of view.
You might be able to share the resource of Will's. Yeah, right. Good. Thank you, Melinda. Any more economic development questions? There being none, the time is 10:01. We'll break for morning tea, councillors. We should be receiving a deputation very shortly. 10:15.